St. Lucia is a small island developing state. It's located within the Eastern Caribbean, and as many persons would know, the entire Caribbean is extremely vulnerable to the impact of hazards. St. Lucia is no different. St. Lucia has experienced many natural hazards in the past, and we do expect that with predictions of climate change, that we would be exposed to such impacts in the future. We also do have a number of challenges as it relates to our social issues, and the ministry which I represent, the Ministry of Equity, Social Justice, Local Government and Empowerment, is the ministry that is responsible for ensuring that the social agenda is advanced in a manner that addresses the needs of our most vulnerable persons. Having said so, I believe that there is a very intricate link between disaster management and social protection. And I'm very fortunate to have been involved in both sectors. And so I really want to thank the World Bank and the WFP for bringing together persons to engage in that dialogue, because I believe it's a very important dialogue. We know that persons who are vulnerable are disproportionately affected by impacts. We also know that the impacts will be with us. So it is important that we begin to think, we begin to converge our thoughts on how is it that we ensure that the social protection systems that we have existing can be scaled up when it needs to be and can be responsive to the needs of the most vulnerable. And so that discussion for us is coming at an opportune time, because we are in the midst of reform processes in both sectors. We are reforming our disaster management sector to make sure that it is aligned to the principles of comprehensive disaster management. And in that regard, we are looking at our Disaster Management Act, and we are also looking at the disaster management policy, reviewing these and making sure that they are updated. We are also going through a social safety net reform program that will see a review of the Social Protection Act, and it will also see a review of the social protection policy. I have to indicate that we have received support from the World Bank as it relates to that agenda, that reform agenda, and we are expecting to receive additional support from the World Bank in that regard. And so these opportunities are excellent in terms of making sure that we now integrate, we now harmonize for the betterment of the persons that are part of our target population, the needy, the poor, the vulnerable. I think a key takeaway for us in St. Lucia is the need to ensure that we are able to integrate disaster risk reduction into social protection. Oftentimes from the disaster management side of things, we ask persons to be prepared, and that's just by way of an example. But we have to understand that there are persons among us who will not be able to be prepared on their own. They will not be able to purchase the items that we're asking them to purchase. How can the existing social protection program be strengthened? How can it be modified and realigned to ensure that we can provide support to those persons even before an impending impact? And how can it work such that post the event it can be upscaled immediately to provide the assistance that persons need? And I think that is where we want to go with the social protection program that we have in St. Lucia, making sure that disaster management, disaster risk reduction is a key feature, because we understand that disasters are here with us and that there are persons among us who will be disproportionately advantaged or who will be disproportionately impacted by those hazards.
Within the state, though we are the Social Protection Ministry, there are a number of other ministries and agencies which also dispense aspects of social protection. So we have a situation where sometimes we end up serving the same set of individuals. And so we have individuals who should be on the list that are not there, and some who should have graduated that are on the list. Now, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, like the rest of the Eastern Caribbean, is faced with a number of challenges. Climate change being a significant one of those. We also have to add, in the case of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, that we also have an active volcano, which, though erupted last time 1979, it's alive and well, and we are aware of that. So that we have decided within the ministry to do some changes with the assistance of the World Bank and other international agencies. We are looking at how can we make the system better such that more people are being served. How can we make all of the systems which are currently available speak to one another, so to speak, and in that way give us an opportunity to broaden what we already have. Coming to this forum and listening to the presentations made by individuals, I have seen ways in which we can improve significantly on what we already have. Yes, we would have done the project design and all of that, but listening to these presentations, I see we can make additions to what we already have. What I love about these presentations is the fact that you learn from other people's situation. I mean, a disaster is a disaster. The response, that is expected to help individuals at that particular point in need. And so when I hear individuals talk about things that they have tried, and significantly, things that didn't work, which would prevent us in St. Vincent and the Grenadines from making those exact mistakes, and for the information that we already have, ways in which we can tweak it based on the information that is there. At one of the sessions yesterday, somebody said it's more like an oral tradition, things have been passed on, and I know had I not been at this particular session, this information I would not have heard and would not have known about, because these are the things that don't normally get written down into the textbooks. So I am happy that I have had the opportunity to hear these things, and now I can go home and tweak the information that we already have and make it better, so that hopefully should something happen, we pray it doesn't, but should it happen, we would be in a much better position to respond positively to the people.
You know, events like this are very important, especially for countries like Jamaica. We're small, we're developing, and there is usually a lot to learn from other countries, what they have done, their experiences, and many times you will learn something that you can't immediately go back and implement or adapt for your own country, but the ideas that you and the experiences that are shared in the future, it certainly helps to shape what you do in the country. Today, or over the past 2 days, I learned about the IVAC, which is from the Dominican Republic, and I've asked about it, and it is definitely something that I want to learn more about, because I think it's something that Jamaica will want to utilize in some of our programs going forward. You know, I must commend the World Bank. We have been working, well, I've personally been working with the bank in Jamaica from about 1999, 2000. And it's very interesting because I sat there over the last 2 days reflecting how the work with us in Jamaica has changed over the years. We started out looking at our social safety nets and how we revamp what we have to make them more effective. Then we moved on to looking at when we had various crises in the world, when we had the food, fuel, financial crisis. And now we're looking at how we adapt our social protection systems to make them more resilient and to build resilient societies. So, I mean, if I were to reflect on the bank and the work of the bank and how the bank has really been instrumental for us, I think I have to give the bank an A+, thumbs up, for certainly changing and seeing the changes in the need of countries, the international dialogue that we need to have, and the work as things change across the world. So I think the bank has really been truly helpful to many countries, certainly in the Caribbean and Latin America.
The adaptive social protection, as you know, has been in the center of the conversation at the international level, and many of the partners at the international level, WFP, UNICEF, and others have, FAO and others have been paying particular attention to the adapting social protection systems, to the crisis, and having them respond to the crisis. And these are very important aspects of social protection system, being dynamic and flexible to respond to different shocks. And these type of events are enriching our knowledge about what practically works in countries and what different governments have been doing about this issue. And in Latin America in particular, it's an important issue because the region is so prone to the natural disasters and hurricanes and floods, and are all over the place and very frequent. So it's very important to understand what works on the ground, and these type of events are very important in enriching our understanding. Actually, even today, we already learned that there are some effective responses and some effective mechanisms that some of the governments, such as, for example, Ecuador, Chile, and others have put in place to respond to this type of natural disasters and shocks, climatic shocks. So I think it's important that we actually work together with our partners to understand what worked on the ground. On top of it, it's important that these experiences are shared across the globe, because this is not a Latin America specific phenomenon. There are lots of shocks and different shocks in different parts of the world, and today there have been examples brought up from Philippines and other Pacific islands. So I think there is learning to do, and we started that learning journey with all our partners in Frankfurt last year, where we had a South-South learning event on adaptive social protection that many of the Latin American countries participated, but there were more than 200 participants from all over the world, about 70 countries, I believe. And I think we should continue this conversation because things evolve, and we have practical responses that we actually need to document and disseminate that knowledge. So this is an important event in that regard. And also, it's important for the government to establish direct contacts with their counterparts, so government-to-government contacts, so they can exchange their experiences and learn from each other. So I think these events contribute to global knowledge and actually a sort of a community of practice on this issue.